The goal is not to become slick. The goal is to become steady. People are tired of pressure. They are tired of hype. They are tired of being handled. They're looking for someone who can stay calm, ask the right question, tell the truth, and help them make a good decision. In a noisy world, become steady. In a scripted world, become sincere. In an automated world, become more human. Welcome back to Time-Tested Mastery, Life Lesson Sell, the show where we talk about trust-based selling, leadership discipline, and real-world lessons that hold up under pressure. Today, I want to pull together 3 recent conversations and point out one common thread. Paul Salter talked about mindset, self-sabotage, imposter syndrome, and the invisible ceilings that keep capable people playing smaller than they should. Zach Russell talked about presence, awareness in the stories we attach to situations. Richard Blank talked about phone skill, listening, tone, open-ended questions, and how to create trust in a live conversation. 3 different guests, 3 different angles, but one message kept showing up. You cannot get to truth until you create safety. And you cannot create safety for others until you have some control over yourself. That is why I keep coming back to 2 messages I'm teaching right now: the trust to truth method and control before confidence. People do not usually tell the truth because you pressured them. They tell you the truth when they feel safe enough to tell it. And that begins with you. So let's start with Paul Salter. Paul made a point every salesperson and leader needs to hear. Sometimes the next level does not feel exciting at first. Sometimes it feels threatening. Most people say they want more success. They want more income. They want recognition. They want opportunity. But when the next level actually starts to arrive, it can feel very unfamiliar. And unfamiliar often feels unsafe. You start standing out. Expectations increase. Pressure increases. People look at you differently. And then self-sabotage begins. Not always in dramatic ways. Sometimes it looks like avoiding the calls, delaying the follow-up, skipping your preparation, not practicing the presentation, telling yourself you are busy when the truth is you are uncomfortable. That connects directly to control before confidence. Confidence is not something you wait for. Confidence is something you build by keeping promises to yourself. Every time you do what you said you were going to do, you lay another brick of self-trust. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you weaken that trust. And if you do not trust yourself, it is very hard to show up strong for someone else. That is why control comes first. Control of your preparation, control of your schedule, control of your habits, control of your response when a client pushes back, control of your willingness to do the work when motivation is not there. Not control in a rigid way, control as responsibility, control as stewardship, control as business maturity. The professional says, I am responsible for the instrument. I am responsible for the tone I bring into the room. I am responsible for the preparation. That is where confidence begins. So if you are an agent listening and you keep saying, I know what to do, but I am not doing it, do not just call it a time management problem. It may be a self-trust problem. Make one promise, keep it, then make another. That is how control becomes confidence. Now let's bring in Zach Russell. Zach talked about the stories we attach to situations. That matters because most salespeople do not walk into appointments clean. They walk in carrying old stories. They remember the listing they lost, the buyer who ghosted them, the client who challenged their commission, the lead who wasted their time. Then the next client says something simple like, we want to interview a few agents, and the salesperson hears rejection. The seller asks, "Will you cut your commission?" and the agent hears disrespect. The buyer says, "We are not ready to sign anything," and the agent hears distrust. But maybe that is not what is happening. Maybe the client is just trying to feel safe. Maybe they have been burned before. Maybe they are confused. Maybe they are not attacking you. Maybe they are just protecting themselves. And if you are not present, you will respond to the story in your head instead of the human being in front of you. That is where trust to truth becomes practical. The first thing a client says is rarely the full truth. The first objection is usually not the deepest objection. The first resistance is often protection. So your job is not to overpower the objection. Your job is to lower the defense. You do that by staying present. You pause, you listen, you ask better questions. You say, "Tell me more about that. What concerns you most about that? What would need to be true for you to feel comfortable moving forward? Is that your main concern, or is there something else underneath it?" That is not weakness. That is leadership. That is how trust opens the door to truth. But here is the key. You cannot create calm if you are not carrying calm. You cannot create emotional safety if you are emotionally triggered yourself. You cannot invite truth if your own nervous system is already defending itself. Now, presence is not soft. Presence is a professional skill. A present agent hears their tone. A present agent notices hesitation. A present agent does not pounce on every objection. A present agent does not need to prove themselves in every single sentence. They slow the conversation down enough to understand what is actually happening. That is control before confidence. Control your state first, then lead the conversation. Now let's bring in Richard Blank. Richard came in this from a practical side. He understands live conversations. He understands tone, openings, listening, timing, pace, and how to lower defensiveness quickly. One of his strongest points was this: a good opening can buy you a few more breaths of conversation. That is a powerful way to think about sales. A few more breaths. That may be all you need at first. Not a perfect presentation, not a clever close, just enough time for the other person to realize this person is not here to pressure me. That is the beginning of trust. Richard also emphasized open-ended questions, and this is central to the trust to truth method. If you ask shallow questions, you get shallow answers. If you rush, people protect themselves. If you interrogate, they shut down. But if you ask good questions and give people room to answer, they start telling you what is really going on. A seller says your commission is too high. The amateur gets defensive. The professional asks, when you say high, are you comparing that to another proposal? Or are you concerned about your net proceeds? A buyer says, we are not ready. The amateur says, okay, I'll follow up later. The professional asks, what would need to happen for the timing to feel right? A client says, we want to think about it. The amateur accepts the brush off. The professional says, that makes sense. What part do you want to think about? That is not pressure. That is clarity. That is not manipulation. That is leadership. You are helping people tell the truth. And once you have the truth, you can actually help. Richard also made another point that fits perfectly with control before confidence. Practice matters because your tone matters, your pace matters, your opening matters, your ability to pause matters. Your ability to listen for the golden moment matters. Most agents want confidence without practice. They want confidence without repetition. They want confidence without hearing themselves. They want confidence without role-playing. That is backwards. Confidence is the result of controlled practice. You do not become confident on the phone by avoiding the phone. You do not become confident handling objections by avoiding objections. You do not become confident in listing appointments by winging your listing presentations. You become confident by practicing the moment before the moment arrives. You practice your openings, you practice your questions, you practice your commission conversation, you practice your buyer consultation, you practice the pause, you practice staying calm when the client challenges you. That is not fake. That is being a professional. Musicians practice scales. Athletes practice fundamentals. Speakers practice their delivery. And professionals prepare. So why would a salesperson walk into a high-stakes financial conversation and think they should just wing it? Natural only comes after practice, and confidence comes after personal control. So when I put these three conversations together, here is the lesson. Paul reminds us that the first sale is often internal. Before you can lead others, you have to stop betraying yourself. You have to keep the promises to yourself. You have to face where you are playing small. Zach reminds us that the real moment happens in the present moment. Not yesterday's failure or victory, not tomorrow's fear, but this person, this conversation, this moment right now. Richard reminds us that communication is a craft. Good intentions are not enough. You need skill. You need language. You need listening. You need practice. Together they point to one truth. Sales mastery is not pressure. Sales mastery is the ability to create enough safety, clarity, and trust that the truth can come out. That is the heart of the trust to truth method. Trust first, truth second, solutions third. Most salespeople rush to the solution. They hear one sentence and start prescribing. But if you have not earned trust, they will not give you the full truth. And if you do not have the full truth, your solution is premature. So I'm inviting you to slow down. Control yourself. Get present. Ask better questions. Listen a little longer. Practice deliberately. Create emotional safety, then let their truth come forward. So here's a practical assignment for this week. One area of control this week. Just one. Maybe it's your prospecting block. Maybe it is your listing presentation. Maybe it is your buyer consultation. Maybe it is just your phone opening. Maybe it is your ability to pause before responding. Set a standard, not a wish. Not a vague goal, but a standard. I make calls from 9 to 10 a.m. I ask 3 open-ended questions before I try to present a solution. I prepare in writing before every single appointment. I record 1 practice presentation this week. I pause before answering objections. That is how you build control. And when you build control of yourself, confidence follows. Brick by brick, promise by promise, conversation by conversation. The goal is not to become slick. The goal is to become steady. People are tired of pressure. They are tired of hype. They are tired of being handled. They're looking for someone who can stay calm, ask the right question, tell the truth, and help them make a good decision. In a noisy world, become steady. In a scripted world, become sincere. In an automated world, become more human. In a pressure-filled world, become safe. That is time-tested mastery. That is control before confidence. And that is the trust the truth method. I'm Mark Dolan. Thanks for listening to Time-Tested Mastery Life Lesson Sell. If this episode helped you, share it with an agent, broker, team leader, or a salesperson who needs to hear it. And remember, control creates confidence. Trust opens the door to truth, and truth is where real service begins. See you next time.